A girl once rescued a swan unintentionally and released it after a period of care. 2 years later, the swan returned with a gift to repay. What exactly happened? Hey there, Viral Videos here. Before we go on, like this video, smash the subscribe button and click the notification bell. We post the most beautiful, amazing, and scary videos every single day. Let's proceed with the video. There was a girl named Alice in a village. Alice's parents made a living by raising fish and had only one daughter, so they doted on her very much. However, Alice was not very arrogant, but very sensible. Her academic performance was very good since she was a child, and when she grew up, she lived to her family's expectations and was admitted to university. But after graduation, she did not stay in the city to work, but returned home with her luggage. Alice's father, Tim, was very dissatisfied with his daughter's practice, saying that they did not provide her to study so that she could raise fish with them later. Faced with her father's incomprehension and accusations, Alice could only explain patiently, "Dad, I studied aquaculture in college and I just wanted to come back to help you relieve stress." Tim scornfully said that they were unprofitable to raise fish and that the fish smell was terrible. Alice could not convince her father but could only prove it with practical actions. After arriving at the fish pond the next day, Alice heard strange sounds coming from the water plants next to her. She wondered if there were birds in the pond breaking in to steal the fish. Alice quietly approached the water plants and found that it was a gray duck. At that time, it was struggling with its legs tangled in water plants. Seeing the funny look of the little duck, Alice laughed. Then she gently pressed the little duck and pulled the aquatic plants off its leg. "Look at the little duck who just got out of trouble." She scoffed that it was all in trouble because it was running around and that if no one found it, it would die. Alice thought that it would be inappropriate to put that duck in her pond where the fish might be eaten, so she took it back and wanted to keep it as a pet when they got home. Tim was even more annoyed when he saw his daughter came back with a little gray duck and kept it as a pet. He glared at Alice and entered the home. Alice's mother stepped forward to comfort her and said that her father was still angry and hoped that she would not care, and she would always support her. Facing her mother's understanding and support, Alice smiled happily, and then Alice handed the little duck in her arms to her mother and said that she found it in the pond. She felt it was too small to survive, so brought it back. They found some chopped vegetables, leaves at home and placed them in front of the little duck. Seeing the little duck eating happily, they looked at each other happily and smiled. Looking at the cute little duck, Alice named it Lulu. After that, the little duck lived in Alice's house. After several days of investigation by Alice, he suggested to Tim that groupers could be added to the pond and that they could be farmed with tilapia. Tim didn't object to her proposal, although he didn't want her to come back to raise fish. Alice was busy with excitement. Alice was worried when she first put in the fry, so she went to the fish pond several times a day at the time. The little duck followed her swayingly and always jumped into the water when she wasn't looking. Alice was afraid that Lulu would eat fry at first, but what she didn't expect was that it was very sensible and only had duckweed and aquatic plants in the water. After that, Alice stopped preventing Lulu from playing in the water and sometimes rewarded it with small fish. Alice wondered how the duck liked playing in the water so much, but she didn't have time to think about it and was busy with the fish pond. The little duck grew up slowly. Alice's mother felt that something was wrong with the grown duck, and she told Alice that Lulu didn't look like a duck. Hearing her mother's words, she squatted down and examined it carefully. She watched Lulu walk majestically around and wondered if it was a swan. Alice wasn't sure, so she sent Lulu's picture to her college friend who majored in animal husbandry. Alice was surprised by her friend's recovery. Soon after, her friend told her it was a black swan, but it wasn't fully grown, so the hair was still gray. She did not expect that she had been feeding a swan as a duck, and her friend said that this swan was a protected animal. Although Alice was reluctant to continue feeding it, she hurriedly contacted the staff. Under Alice's reluctant gaze, Lulu was taken away by the staff. Before leaving, the staff explained to Alice that the swan would be brought to the ecological garden where the environment would be more suitable for its growth, and she could see it unexpectedly. When Alice didn't see Lulu, Lulu went back first. One day, Alice was measuring the water temperature in the pond when suddenly there was a thumping sound. Alice looked up and saw that Lulu had returned. They hadn't seen each other for a few days. Lulu's feathers were darker, and beside it, there was a swan about its age who might be Lulu's friend. She didn't expect Lulu to have friends in a few days, and it seemed that it lived well there. so Alice was relieved. She happily greeted Lulu and went back to work. Lulu played with its mates in the pool as before after finishing her work. Alice considered whether to talk to the staff, but she didn't expect Lulu to leave with its friend. Alice had to give up, and she waved and said, and went to see Lulu. Lulu called twice from the sky, as if responding to Alice. Alice, who had been busy for many days, finally got some free time, so she planned to visit Lulu's new home. She didn't find Lulu when she got to that eco park. It only found out after asking the staff that Lulu and its companions had gone north a few days ago. Alice blamed herself for not seeing Lulu because it forgot that they were migrating. She didn't know if they would come back next year. 2 years later, Alice was running her family's pond well, and at that time, other fish farmers in the village envied her. Although Alice was very happy, she regretted that Lulu never came back after the family's business was stable. Alice wanted to go on a trip to Fujian with her classmates to see if she could expand the market for fish. Just 2 weeks after Alice left the house, she got a call from her parents saying that the fish in the pond had died, and they had died in large numbers. Alice hurried home and saw 5 or 6 black swans on the pond. In addition to duckweed elegantly cleaning their beautiful hair, looking leisurely, Alice looked at her parents in confusion. Tim explained that not long after she left, a pool of duckweeds grew. They were salvaged, but they grew a lot. Her mother pointed to a group of swans, saying that they came that day. They just found out. Alice looked at the dark-feathered swan and asked tentatively if it was Lulu. The swan seemed to understand, so it swam towards Alice gracefully with its head up. Alice felt very moved. She didn't expect the little gray duck to look so beautiful back then. But there was a more important thing at that time, which was to deal with those duckweeds. It was useless for her to salvage, so she could only think of other ways, and in the end, she decided to throw some grass carp on cushion carp into the pond. And Lulu and its friends could get rid of some duckweed too. After a few days, the duckweed really disappeared and Alice was relieved. After dinner one day, Alice planned to rest. However, a black swan suddenly broke into her house. Alice knew that it was the friend that Lulu brought back home before, and it looked smaller than Lulu. It flapped its wings anxiously, and Alice wanted to step forward to reassure it, but it ran backwards towards the fish pond. Alice knew something was wrong, so she hurriedly followed. At the edge of the pond, Alice saw Lulu lying on the ground, groaning in pain, with a large bag of bait scattered around. Before she could think too much, Alice hurriedly contacted the staff of the eco park and asked them to treat Lulu if it was not until Lulu was settled that Alice remembered the strangeness by the pond. So she asked her parents why such a large bag of bait was scattered by the pond. But her parents didn't know what was going on. Alice thought of the eutrophication of the pond in those days. It was not yet summer and she was working very carefully, something she didn't expect. Finally, Alice decided to call the police. After several days of investigation by the police, they finally found out that the feed belonged to Mike in the village and that the nutrient-rich pond was also deliberately done by him. After interrogation, Alice realized that it was the merchant who had previously cooperated with their family who suddenly cooperated with Alice, which made him hold grudges. So he wanted to destroy Alice's pond, but he didn't expect to be discovered by the swan. So they got into a fight and he got pecked several times. Mike was very angry and afraid of being discovered, so he ignored the bait and just wounded Lulu of Sled. After the truth came out, Mike was punished accordingly. Lulu would have returned north after its injuries, but it would return to Alice's pond every winter to see her. What did you think of the story? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Like the video and subscribe. See you next time.